The text arrived at 6:12 a.m. "Don't come to the gala. My HOA president," I replied. "Then forget the money for the venue." The neighborhood chat exploded with laughing emojis. They thought the deposit was non-refundable. 10 days later, my phone was blowing up. They weren't laughing anymore. "My name is Sarah Thompson, and for the first 34 years of my life I believed community was something you endured. It was a weather system, unpredictable, often cold, and you just had to find the right coat and brace for the storm. My coats were my children, Oliver and June. They were the warmth I wrapped around myself when the wind blew down from the peaks surrounding our little slice of Willow Creek Estates, Colorado. Our house is small. A splash of soft blue against the identical beige backdrop the HOA demands. It smells like cinnamon from June's morning oatmeal and the faint clean scent of turpentine from the corner where I paint when the kids are asleep. This house, bought with money I scraped together from my freelance graphic design business, Hearth Creative Company, is my sanctuary. Here the chaos is our own. Spilled juice, not spilled citations. Oliver's muddy soccer cleats by the door, not the dirt the board constantly tries to track into my life. The HOA, or what passes for one, is a carefully constructed stage play directed by Patty Hargrove. My community leader Patty is a woman who loves peace so much she's willing to sacrifice actual residents for it. When she became president 5 years ago, she didn't just get a title. She got a new script. In this script, Patty was the leading lady and her daughter Lila was the flawless princess. I was cast in the role of the problematic, messy shadow in the background. The one whose life, a teenage pregnancy, fierce independence, a career built from scratch without a single handout, was an inconvenient smudge on their pristine property value portrait. Lila, 5 years my junior, learned her lines perfectly. She is beautiful, charming, and has mastered the art of reflecting her mother's ambitions back at her. Now she was engaged to Grant Whitmore, son of a real estate magnate from Ridgeline City. The gala was set to be the social event of the season, a testament to Patty's success in curating the perfect HOA image for Best Neighborhood Awards. I knew my place in this production. I was the reluctant donor, the offstage benefactor. My presence was tolerated at block parties where Patty would offer backhanded compliments about how I was managing. Her eyes scanning my store-brand dress and my children's slightly too loud laughter with a surgeon's precision, looking for violations to dissect later. Oliver, my brilliant sensitive 10-year-old, and June, my fierce bright-eyed 6-year-old, were seen as accessories to my messy life. They were reminders that I hadn't followed the script of perfect beige lawns and silent evenings. The text message arrived on a Tuesday morning just as I was pouring milk over Oliver's cereal. The phone buzzed on the counter, a notification from the Willow Creek HOA residents group chat. It was a thread I mostly muted, a digital room where I was a silent observer to their performative community life. But this message was different. It was from Patty. 6:12 a.m. Sarah, a quick heads up about the Centennial Gala. We've had to make some difficult decisions about the guest list to maintain the elegance of the event. The board and I have decided it would be best if you didn't come. The children would be, well, it's a very formal adult affair and they would be awkward. We hope you understand. I read it twice. The milk carton slipped from my hand, splashing a white puddle on the worn linoleum floor. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't the words themselves, but the cold, casual cruelty of them. Awkward. My children weren't people to her. They were potential embarrassments. They were threats to the elegance of the event. Oliver looked up, his brow furrowed. Mom, you okay? I forced a smile, my lips feeling stiff and foreign. Spilled the milk, buddy. No big deal. I grabbed a paper towel, my hands shaking as I wiped the floor. My phone buzzed again, a laughing emoji from Lila, a single tear-streaked smiley face that felt like a slap. Then the messages continued as if I wasn't even there. Lila, Mom, Did you talk to the planner about moving the Johnsons to table 7? They can't be near the speakers. Patty. Already handled. Darling. The Whitmores will be at the head table. Of course, everything is going to be perfect. They were discussing seating arrangements for a gala I was now explicitly uninvited to. My children and I had been surgically removed, and they had already closed the wound and moved on. The shock was a physical thing, a cold stone in my stomach. I thought of last summer's block party. I'd spent my last $50 on approved beige patio cushions for Patty. She'd opened them, held them up, and said, "Oh, how practical." Lila had received a diamond tennis bracelet and squealed with delight. I remember looking at the other neighbors, hoping for a flicker of recognition, of defense. They just smiled strained, placid expressions and said, "Happy President, happy property values." I was the price of their peace. I walked into the living room, away from the kids, and sank onto the couch. My heart was hammering against my ribs. This wasn't just an insult. It was an eraser. They were pretending I didn't exist, except when they needed something. And they needed something. A week prior, Patty had called me. Her voice was syrupy sweet, the tone she used when she was about to ask for a favor that was actually a demand. She'd talked for 10 minutes about the venue, the Aspen Vale Pavilion. It was breathtaking, exclusive, featured in a local luxury magazine. Then came the pivot. "Sarah, honey, the board and I were talking. We know things are tight for you, but this is for the community. It's a neighborhood effort. We're putting you down for a $5,000 contribution toward the venue. It's the least you can do to show your support." It wasn't a request. It was an invoice for a relationship I wasn't even allowed to fully participate in. $5,000. That was 2 months of my mortgage. That was summer camp for both kids. That was the emergency fund I painstakingly rebuilt after my old car died last winter. I had hesitated, stammered something about looking at my finances, but she'd cut me off. "Wonderful. I'll let the planner know you're on board. It means so much to Lila, and to our property values." Now, staring at the text message on my phone, the audacity of it hit me like a physical blow. They wanted my money but not my presence. They wanted my financial support for a party I was banned from attending. They wanted me to help pay for the very stage upon which they would perform their perfect community fantasy, a fantasy that had no room for me or my awkward children. The shock began to recede, replaced by a slow creeping cold. It was the quiet, dangerous calm that comes after the initial explosion. I looked at my phone, at the laughing emoji from Lila, at the casual cruelty of Patty. I thought of all the years I had swallowed my pride, all the block parties I had endured the subtle digs, all the times I had made myself small to fit into their world of identical beige houses and zero visible toys. I did it because I believed, foolishly, that my children needed them, that they needed a sense of a larger community. I had been wrong. They didn't need people who saw them as an inconvenience. And I didn't need to pay for the privilege of being disowned. My fingers moved across the screen, my resolve hardening with each tap. The anger wasn't hot and messy. It was cold and precise. A decision had been made. A line had been crossed. And I was about to draw one of my own. I typed my reply into the group chat, my thumb hovering over the send button for only a second. "Okay, then you can forget my card for the venue." I hit send. The response was almost immediate. Another laughing emoji from Lila. Patty replied within a minute. "Don't be childish, Sarah. The deposit is non-refundable and your contribution has already been factored in. This is about the community's perfect day, not your feelings." The board chimed in with the usual platitudes. "Let's all just calm down. Sarah, don't make this difficult." Difficult? I was the one being difficult. Not the woman who uninvited her neighbors and their children via group text. Not the daughter who laughed about it. I was the problem. I always was. They thought I was bluffing. They saw me as emotional, reactive, and ultimately powerless. They believed their world of appearances and property values was insulated from the consequences of their actions. They didn't understand that I wasn't fighting with feelings anymore. I was fighting with facts. And the first fact was this: my money would not be used as a welcome mat for them to wipe their feet on. I put my phone down on the counter, the screen dark. I walked back into the kitchen where Oliver was now trying to clean up the rest of the spilled milk, smearing it in a wider circle. June was giggling, pointing at his milky hands. I knelt, took the paper towel from him, and looked into his earnest, worried eyes. "It's okay, sweetie. Mom's got it." As I cleaned the floor, a quiet clarity settled over me. This wasn't just about a gala. It was about my life. It was about the world I was building for my children. It was about teaching them that their value was not determined by anyone else's definition of elegance. It was about truth, my truth. And I would not let them put my name on their lies any longer. The silence in my house after a group chat exchange is a specific kind of loud. It's the sound of unspoken history rushing in to fill the void. I stood in my kitchen, the phone lying face down on the counter like a sleeping snake, and felt the weight of 5 years with Patty settle in my bones. It wasn't a sudden storm. It was a slow creeping frost that had been killing things by degrees for years. My decision to defy them felt less like a choice and more like a reflex, the final involuntary jerk of a nerve that had been prodded too many times. Why had I let it go on for so long? The answer was always the same. A mantra I'd repeated until it felt like truth. The kids need community. They needed to know the neighbors, even if those neighbors were ghosts at their own tables. They needed a sense of belonging, even one that saw them as competition. I had believed this. I had sacrificed pieces of myself on the altar of that belief. Now, in the ringing silence, I saw that belief for what it was, a beautifully crafted cage. The frost had started early. I was 29 when Patty became president. I remember the day she moved her welcome signs into the neighborhood, the ones my mother-style garden had loved. She'd walk through the common area, her fingers trailing over my flower beds, and say, "Well, this is all very provincial. It will have to go." She didn't look at me, but I felt the comment land on my skin. I was provincial too. My slightly frizzy hair, my second-hand jeans, my refusal to paint my shutters the exact approved beige. I was a problem to be managed. Her favorite tool of management was comparison, and Lila was the perfect yardstick. At neighborhood meetings, she would praise Lila's posture, her effortless grace, while her eyes would flick to me. "Sarah, dear, shoulders back. You're slouching like someone who doesn't care about curb appeal." The board would just clear their throats and pass the agenda. Their silence was its own language, a dialect of cowardice I had learned to translate fluently. It meant, "Please just be quiet. Don't upset her." They chose a peaceful HOA over a fair one, and I was the price of that peace. The most expensive payment came when I graduated from night school with my graphic design certification. I'd had Oliver during my junior year, a surprise that had scandalized Patty and cemented my status as the neighborhood cautionary tale. His father had vanished when he saw the positive pregnancy test, and I'd worked 2 jobs, attended night classes, and nursed my son in the library stacks. I crossed the stage with my certificate. Oliver's name whispered under my breath with every step. I'd sent them an invitation to the little ceremony. Of course, the board had called the night before. "Honey, you know Patty has that committee lunch and Lila has a tennis tournament. We're so proud of you, but we just can't make it." I sat alone in the bleachers after the ceremony, holding my certificate in one hand and my son's tiny fingers in the other. I looked out at the sea of cheering families and understood. My success was an inconvenience. It didn't fit their narrative of my messy, regrettable life. My self-reliance was an indictment of their absence. So they simply pretended it wasn't happening. That was their method eraser. And it had just happened again a few weeks ago. Before the text, Lila had posted photos from her bridal shower. It was at some impossibly chic restaurant in Ridgeline City. There were dozens of pictures, opening gifts, Patty beaming like a queen mother, cousins and board members I barely saw anymore, all raising champagne flutes. The caption written by Lila was a little knife twist. Feeling so loved, surrounded by the most important women in my life. The whole community altogether. The whole community. I wasn't there. I hadn't even been invited. I saw the pictures while waiting for June to finish her ballet class. I sat in my car, scrolling through their smiling faces, and felt that old familiar ache of being the ghost at the feast. June came running out, her face flushed with happiness, a whirlwind of pink tulle and joy, and the ache was replaced by a fierce protective anger. My children would not inherit this feeling. They would not learn to apologize for their own existence. That was the wound the text message had torn open. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the promise they'd made to my son and daughter. It had happened at the last HOA picnic. The last time we'd all been together, Patty, in a rare moment of what seemed like magnanimity, had knelt down in front of my kids. Lila had just announced her engagement date. "Well," Patty had said, her voice dripping with contrived sweetness, "we are going to have the most important jobs for the two of you." She'd looked at June. "You, my darling, will be the most beautiful junior ambassador in the entire gala." June's eyes had gone wide with wonder. Then Patty turned to Oliver. "And you, my handsome man, will be our ring-bearer equivalent, carrying the community banner. You'll be so brave, won't you, Oliver?" Usually so reserved. He had puffed out his chest and nodded, a rare, brilliant smile spreading across his face. For weeks it was all they talked about. June practiced waving imaginary banners around our living room. Oliver practiced walking slowly and solemnly, his hands cupped as if holding the flag. It was the first time they had ever been assigned a role in the community play other than inconvenient props. They felt seen. They felt chosen. The promise was withdrawn as quietly as it was made. There was no announcement. It was just a slow dawning realization. Lila started posting on the HOA blog about her niece from the Whitmore side, a perfectly polished 7-year-old being the junior ambassador. She mentioned Grant's younger cousin would carry the banner. When I gently asked Lila about it, she'd been evasive. "Oh, things just got so complicated with the planning. The Whitmores had their own ideas. You know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. My children had been quietly demoted. Their excitement and their smiles were less valuable than whatever strategic alliance was forged by giving the roles to the Whitmore family. My children were awkward. They were a liability to the brand. And yet, they still expected my $5,000. The memory of that phone call from Patty was so clear. She'd talked about the Aspen Vale Pavilion, how it had been featured in Colorado Living, how the photographer was the best in the state. "It's an investment, Sarah," she'd said, her voice low and serious, as if she were letting me in on a stock tip. "An investment in this community's reputation. When people see this gala, they see all of us. It reflects on all of us. It is your duty to contribute. Duty, not a gift, not a gesture of goodwill, a tax for living in the neighborhood, a fee to ensure the HOA image remained pristine." I finally picked up my phone. I didn't look at their messages. I opened my web browser and typed in Aspen Vale Pavilion. The website was a masterpiece of minimalist luxury. Sweeping shots of a grand hall with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a valley of aspen trees. A smiling, elegant couple dancing on a polished floor. Testimonials praised the venue's unparalleled elegance and flawless execution. This was Patty's heaven. A place where reality could be curated, where anything messy or awkward could be kept outside the grand oak doors. It was all so clear now. It was a transaction. They wanted to purchase an image of perfection. and they were invoicing every resident to cover the cost. But my children and I were not line items that enhanced the final product. We were a potential deficit. We detracted from the value. So they cut us from the budget, but they forgot to cut our invoice. They wanted my money, not me. They wanted my resources, not my reality. They wanted me to help build the beautiful house from which I was banned. I thought of Oliver's proud smiling face when he was asked to carry the banner. I thought of June dancing around our living room, lost in a dream of being junior ambassador. They hadn't just uninvited us. They had taken something from my children. They had made a promise and then treated it like it was nothing, like my children's feelings were disposable. The cold resolve in my chest hardened into something that felt like steel. This was no longer just about drawing a line in the sand. This was about dismantling the lie they had built stone by stone. And the first stone was my name, which they had attached to a financial obligation for a fantasy I would not be attending. They thought the deposit was non-refundable. They were about to find out just how binding a contract really is. Emotion is a luxury. For 2 days I had allowed it to flood the house. A silent swirling tide of anger and hurt, but emotion doesn't pay the mortgage. It doesn't get a graphic design project to a client on time, and it certainly doesn't fight battles against people who are immune to it. By Thursday morning the tide had receded, leaving behind the hard, clear landscape of strategy. I opened a new document on my laptop, the white screen as clean and unforgiving as my new state of mind. I created 2 columns. The font was crisp, no-nonsense Helvetica. What I know, I am uninvited to the gala. So are my children. The reason given, we are awkward. Lila found this funny. The board remained silent. They still expect me to contribute $5,000 to the venue. Patty claimed my contribution was factored in and the deposit was non-refundable. What I don't know, is my name actually on any legally binding contract? What is the real payment status with the venue? How have they explained my absence to the Whitmores? Can a verbal promise be enforced? The second list was shorter, but each item was a door. I just needed to find the keys. I started with the biggest door, Aspen Vale Pavilion. I looked up their number and took a deep breath, pushing away the image of Sarah Thompson, the rejected neighbor, and channeling the persona of Sarah Thompson, CEO of Hearth Creative Company, a woman who deals with contracts and vendors every day. A cheerful voice answered. Aspen Vale Pavilion. This is Chloe. Hello, Chloe. My name is Sarah Thompson. I'm calling regarding the Hargrove Gala. I'm a resident of Willow Creek Estates. I let the title hang in the air, a small bitter irony. I just have a quick question about the payment schedule. There was a series of clicks as she typed. Okay, I see the file here. Lila called her and Grant Whitmore. Beautiful event. Thank you. I was just confirming the final payment due date. Patty is coordinating, but I wanted to double check on my end. Another pause. This one slightly longer. Well, Chloe said, her voice dropping a little. It looks like the final balance was actually due last Tuesday. Bingo. Oh, really? I must have had my dates mixed up. So the account is currently past due. That's correct, she said, her tone now professionally cautious. We've left a few messages for the gala planner and Mrs. Hargrove. We need to have it settled by the end of this week or we can't guarantee the booking. My heart gave a small hard thump. This was leverage. I understand. I'll be sure to follow up with them. Could you just confirm for me how the payments are logged? I just want to make sure my contribution is properly noted. More typing. I see the initial deposit was paid and she paused. There's just a note here from the event manager. It says, awaiting final balance per planner. Partial payer is resident Sarah Thompson of Willow Creek. Called her. The air left my lungs in a slow hiss. There it was, my name. Not on a signature line, but in a note. A weaponized piece of hearsay. I see, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Thank you. Chloe, you've been very helpful. I hung up the phone, my mind racing. They weren't just using my name in conversation. They had put it in writing into the official records of a vendor. The next door I needed to unlock was the one marked deception. For that I needed a key. Only one person had it. My neighbor Aunt May, a retired postal worker from 2 streets over who communicates in blunt declarations and has a finely tuned BS detector. She sends my kids $20 bills in their birthday cards and always ends her phone calls with, "Don't let the bastards get you down." She'd tolerated Patty for the sake of community harmony, but had never been fooled by her. I dialed her number. She picked up on the second ring. What did she do now? I didn't have to ask who she meant. I laid it all out for her. The text, the money, the call to the venue. When I was done, there was a long, weary sigh on the other end of the line. That woman could sell ice in a blizzard and convince you it was sunshine, May grumbled. Let me tell you something you don't know. I called Patty last month to ask why I hadn't gotten an invitation yet. You know what she told me? She said the board was handling it and that things were complicated with you. Complicated how? She passed the phone to her husband. He got on and gave me this whole song and dance. Said that since you live so far out of the approved aesthetic zone, it was just too difficult to coordinate everything with you and the kids. She said you understood completely and were just happy to contribute financially to show your support. I almost dropped the phone. Out of the approved aesthetic zone? I live 20 minutes from the pavilion. I know that, kiddo. You think I don't? I said Patty. She lives in Willow Creek. She just laughed. This little tinkling sound and said, "Oh, May, you know how it is with a single mother running a business. Her head is in the clouds. To us it feels like she's a world away. She was building a narrative, Sarah. A story to explain why you weren't going to be there. It was premeditated. It wasn't a last-minute decision. They had been paving the road for my exclusion for weeks, lying to their own neighbors to do it. What about Lila? I asked, my voice flat. What's her part in this? Lila. May snorted. Lila learned to sing her mother's song a long time ago. Patty told me Lila mentioned to the Whitmores that you get very anxious in large crowds and aren't comfortable with big formal events, that you preferred to support the community from a distance. So that was the story for the donors. I wasn't the messy neighbor. I was the fragile agoraphobic one. Another lie, neatly packaged and delivered to the people whose opinion mattered most. After I hung up with May, I felt a strange sense of peace. The puzzle pieces were no longer scattered. They were clicking into place, forming a picture that was ugly but clear. I spent the next hour working. I went through my phone and screenshotted the entire group chat conversation. I saved the audio file of the voicemail Patty had left a week ago about the community duty of my contribution. I created a new folder on my desktop and named it The File of Facts. My last call was to my friend Mika Reynolds. We'd met in a business networking group for women years ago. She was a contract lawyer with a mind like a steel trap and zero tolerance for nonsense. I met her at a coffee shop downtown. My laptop and my Bach. I laid out the facts just as I had for May, but this time I included the detail from the venue and Patty's lies. Mika listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable as she sipped her latte. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. Okay. First, a verbal promise to make a gift, which is what this is generally not an enforceable contract. There was no consideration, no signed document. You owe them nothing legally. A wave of relief washed over me. So what about my name in the venue's notes? It's a tactic, Mika said, her eyes narrowing. Patty is creating a chain of unofficial communication to pressure you and to make the vendor believe you're a financially responsible party. It's designed to make things messy and complicated, to shame you into paying to make it all go away. But without your signature on a contract, it's legally meaningless. She leaned forward, her voice firm. Here's what you're going to do. You are going to stop communicating with them directly. No more texts, No more calls. Your fight is not with them. It's with the false narrative they've created. You are going to send a single clear professional email. You will send it to Patty and Lila. You will CC the general information email address for the Aspenvale Pavilion and the gala planner. If you have her contact info, what do I say? You say the truth. You state that, as you have been uninvited from the event, you are formally withdrawing your previously discussed financial contribution. You state that any reference to you as a payer or financial sponsor is unauthorized. You will not be emotional. You will not be accusatory. You will be as bland as a piece of dry toast. You let the facts do the heavy lifting. She paused, then took a sip of her coffee. And then you attach the screenshot of the group chat text where she uninvited you. Let them see their own words. Let the venue see why you're pulling out. The strategy was brilliant. It was clean. It took the fight out of the messy emotional arena of neighborhood dynamics and placed it in the black and white world of business correspondence. It wasn't an attack. It was a clarification, a correction to the record. As I walked out of the coffee shop, the cool mountain air felt different. Felt cleaner. They had written me into their story as a silent, invisible benefactor. They had assigned me a role with a price tag. They thought they could control the narrative. But they had forgotten one thing about me. I'm a designer. I build things from scratch. And I was about to design a new story, one based on my own set of facts. And this time I would be the one writing my name on it. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. My heartbeat was a heavy, dull thud I could feel in my wrists. This was the moment, the transition from reactor to actor. I pulled up a new email. In the to field I typed Patty's email address, the one she used for her society correspondence. Then Lila's. In the CC field I typed the info email for the Aspenvale Pavilion. I had also found the lead event planner's name in a local magazine article, Tanya Morrison. I CC'd her directly. The subject line was simple. Financial contribution, Willow Creek Centennial Gala. My voice in writing was as cold and clear as the mountain air outside my window. Mika's advice echoed in my head. Let the facts do the heavy lifting. To all parties concerned. Following the group chat correspondence received at 6:12 a.m. on Tuesday, October 14th, which explicitly uninvited myself and my children from the Willow Creek Centennial Community Gala, I am hereby formally withdrawing my previously discussed potential contribution of $5,000. Any reference to my name, Sarah Thompson, or my business Hearth Creative Company, as a financial payer, sponsor, or guarantor for this event is unauthorized. I have signed no contracts and provided no such authorization. Please remove my name and contact information from all financial records associated with this event immediately. Direct all future financial inquiries to Patty Hargrove or Lila Hargrove. Do not contact me regarding this financial matter again. My hand was perfectly steady as I clicked the paperclip icon. I navigated to the file of facts and selected the screenshot of the group chat. The image was stark. Patty's cold text, Lila's laughing emoji, and their subsequent discussion of seating charts that did not include us. I attached it. Screenshot, exclusion.png. One attachment. It was evidence. It was motive. It was the truth served up without a single emotional adjective. My cursor hovered over the send button. This was not just an email. It was a declaration of independence. It was the sound of a door locking, a boundary line being drawn in concrete. I clicked. The whoosh sound of the email leaving my outbox was the quietest explosion I'd ever experienced. My phone, sitting on the desk beside me, lit up almost instantly. A text from Patty, then Lila, then a call. My phone buzzed, an angry wasp on the wood. I let it ring. When it stopped, it rang again, my neighbor on the board. I picked up the phone, but not to answer. I went to Patty's contact. Block this caller. Confirmed. I went to Lila's. Block this caller. Confirmed. I looked at the board member's name for a long moment. His silence had been his answer for 5 years. I blocked him too. The sudden absolute silence was a relief so profound it almost made me dizzy. I had work to do, designs for a local brewery that were due Friday. I focused on the curve of a logo, the precise weight of a font, and for an hour I let the silence heal me. That evening I called the kids into the living room. Oliver was holding his baseball glove and June had a drawing of a pink horse. They sat on the rug, looking up at me. This was the part one dreaded, the translation of adult cruelty into a language a child could understand. "Hey guys," I started, my voice softer than it had been all day. "I need to talk to you about the Centennial Gala, the day we were supposed to be junior ambassadors and carry the banner." June's eyes lit up. "Are we getting our fancy outfits?" I took a deep breath. "No, sweetie, we're not. Turns out that, well, President Patty and Lila changed their minds. They've decided to have a party that we are not invited to." Oliver's face immediately shuddered. He's 10, old enough to understand rejection. "Why?" he asked, his voice small. "Is it because I left my bike out?" A fresh spike of anger shot through me, so sharp I almost gasped. "No. Oh God, no. Buddy." I slid off the couch onto the floor with them. "This has nothing to do with you. This is about them. This is about some people needing everything to look a certain way, like a picture in a magazine, and sometimes real, wonderful, fun kids don't fit into their perfect boring picture." "That's mean," June whispered, her lip trembling. "It is mean," I said, validating her feeling. "And it's rude. And when people are mean and rude, we don't try harder to make them like us. We don't let them make us feel bad about ourselves. We just stop. We say, okay, you don't get to be around us. That's called a boundary. It's like a fence you build around yourself to keep the mean stuff out." I looked at Oliver. "Your value, your worth is not based on whether they want you at their party. Your worth is right here. You are smart and kind and the best first baseman in your league." I looked at June. "And you are the most creative artist and you have the biggest, bravest heart I know." I grabbed the calendar from the kitchen wall. I pointed to the gala day, June 21st. It was circled in red. I took a black marker and drew a giant X through it. "This day is no longer the gala day," I announced. "This day is now the Thompson Family Adventure Day. And I have booked 3 tickets for the opening day of Summit Splash Water Park." Their heads shot up. Summit Splash was the new massive park over in Ridgeline, the one with the slide called the Mountain Drop. "Really?" Oliver breathed, his eyes wide. "Really? We'll eat ice cream for lunch and stay until our fingers are wrinkly. That," I said, tapping the calendar, "is how we respect ourselves. We don't waste our time on people who don't deserve us. We go to the water park." The calls didn't stop. They couldn't get through my cell. So they started on my work line, the landline I kept for my business. The next morning it rang. I recognized the number. It was the board vice president. I unblocked him just for this. I needed to hear it. "Sarah," he said, his voice strained and exhausted. "Sarah, you have to call this off. You have to apologize." "Apologize for what?" I asked. I was formatting an invoice and I didn't stop typing. "You know what? You CC'd the venue. You sent them that group chat text. Patty is devastated. Lila is a wreck. You are trying to sabotage this gala." "I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm declining an invitation I never received. I'm correcting a financial record I never authorized. I was uninvited. That is a fact. I will not be paying for a party I am banned from. It's $5,000. Sarah, just let it go for the sake of the community. Why do you always have to make things so difficult? Why can't you just sacrifice a little for the neighborhood?" The word hit me like a stone. Sacrifice. I have been sacrificing for 5 years. I have been sacrificing my feelings at every block party. I have been sacrificing my pride every time she cited me and you said nothing. I will not sacrifice my financial security. and I will not sacrifice my children's dignity. I have a client waiting. Goodbye. I hung up. I didn't reblock his number. His silence was punishment enough for him. The next email landed an hour later. It wasn't from Patty. It was from Tanya Morrison, the event planner. Ms. Thompson, we have received your email and the attached correspondence. Aspen Vale Pavilion takes contractual matters very seriously. The client of record, Patty Hargrove, listed you as a financial guarantor on our internal planning form. To formally remove you from this financial responsibility file, our legal department requires a signed statement from you confirming your withdrawal. I have attached Form 7B, Release of Obligation. Please sign, scan, and return this to me at your earliest convenience. I stared at the screen. I saw the trap. If I signed a release of obligation, I was acknowledging that an obligation existed in the first place. I was participating in their fiction. I forwarded the email to Mika. Her reply came in 5 minutes. Do not sign it. This is a classic liability shift. They're trying to spook you into creating a paper trail that admits you were involved. Send this back. Exactly this. I copied the text she sent me and pasted it into a new reply to Tanya Morrison. Dear Ms. Morrison, thank you for your prompt reply. To be perfectly clear, there is no obligation to be released from. I did not authorize verbally or in writing the use of my name as a financial guarantor. I have not signed any contract with Aspen Vale Pavilion. Any inclusion of my name in your financial records was done without my consent and is factually incorrect. I will not be signing Form 7B as one cannot be released from a responsibility one never held. Please remove my name from all documents immediately and send written confirmation that this has been done. Sincerely, Sarah Thompson. I hit send. My heart was pounding. But this time it wasn't fear. It was the thrill of the fight. Mika called me. One last thing. Sarah, go to a notary today. For an affidavit. A sworn statement. Just a simple sentence. I, Sarah Thompson, affirm that I have never signed any contract or authorization of payment for the Willow Creek Centennial Gala. Get it stamped. Date it. Patty put your name on a form. The next logical step is that she signed your name on a form. You need to have the countermove ready before she even makes it. I left the house, my work sitting unfinished. I drove to the local bank and sat in front of a woman with a kind face and an official stamp. I signed the document. She pressed the embosser into the paper, creating a raised seal. I held the paper in my hands. It was real. It was tangible. It was my truth, legally witnessed and stamped in ink. I drove home, placed it in the file of facts, and went back to work. I had drawn my boundary. The ball was now in their court, and I had a feeling the court was about to get very, very messy. The email I sent to the venue was a depth charge. I had dropped it into the water and was just waiting for the explosion to reach the surface. Took 24 hours. My phone rang while I was elbows deep in a branding guide for a new client, trying to decide between 2 shades of terracotta. It was a number I didn't recognize, a Ridgeline City area code. Not the board, not the planner. I had a rule about unknown numbers, let them go to voicemail. But a different instinct took over. The same one that had me check the venue's payment status. I clicked accept, putting it on speaker. Hello, Hearth Creative. A pause. Sarah Thompson? The voice was male, deep, and had an educated clipped edge. It was a voice used to being listened to. This is she. Sarah. This is Grant Whitmore. My hands froze on the keyboard. The groom, the prize, the man the neighborhood was so desperate to impress that they were willing to excise me to do it. Hello, Grant. Listen, he said, and he sounded genuinely thrown, like a man who had been given 2 different maps. I think there has been a massive misunderstanding. I just got off the phone with the Aspen Vale Pavilion. They're claiming the final payment is delinquent and that you formally withdrew support. That's correct. Well, Lila is here and she's saying it's not true. She said you were just upset about something small and that you're doing this to hurt her. Patty is also on the line and she seems to believe you're trying to sabotage the entire event. He was being diplomatic. I could hear the muffled sound of what was probably Patty in the background, a high frantic whine. They were painting me as the hysterical jealous neighbor. The classic tired narrative. I wasn't going to play. Grant, I said, cutting him off cleanly. What is your email address? He was silent for a beat, surprised by the question. It's g.whitmore@whitmoreestates.com. Come on. Why? Give me 60 seconds. I kept him on the line. I opened my email, pulled up the file of facts, and found the screenshot of the group text. I composed a new message to him. I didn't add a single word of commentary. I just attached the file to g.whitmore@whitmoreestates.com. Subject: Gala attachment. Screenshot exclusion.png. I hit send. Check your email, I said. I heard the ping of his notification through the phone's speaker. Then there was silence. It wasn't the silence of an empty line. It was the dense, heavy silence of someone reading. I could hear the faint whisper of his breathing. I pictured him, a man who builds skyscrapers, a man who deals in facts and figures and dollar signs, looking at the evidence. The 6:12 a.m. Text: don't come to the gala. The reason: the children would be awkward. Lila's reply: the laughing emoji. The silence stretched. 10 seconds. 30. Full minute. It was the sound of a carefully constructed snow globe being shattered. The sound of a man realizing the pristine community he was marrying into had a dark, rotting foundation. When he finally spoke, his voice was unrecognizable. The polite confusion was gone, replaced by a cold, quiet fury. I see, he said. Just 2 words. But they told me everything. He took a sharp breath. My parents, he said, his voice tight, have been asking for 3 months why we haven't set up a dinner with you and your children. They're very family-oriented. They wanted to meet the whole neighborhood. And what did Lila tell them? I asked, though I already knew the answer from Aunt May. She said you were intensely private, that you were shy, that you were uncomfortable with formal events, and preferred to show your support from a distance. He paused, connecting the lie to the screenshot. She lied to me. She lied to my parents. Yes, she did. I said this was not the time for magnanimity. It was the time for facts. And this $5,000, he said, thinking aloud. They were expecting you to pay $5,000 for a gala you were explicitly banned from attending. That is correct. Another long, agonizing silence. I could hear Patty's voice rising in the background again, demanding, what is it? Grant? What did she send you? He ignored her completely. His focus was entirely on me. Sarah, he said, I need to be very clear. My family does not do business this way. We do not associate with this kind of behavior. Grant, I said, and I leaned forward, my voice firm, because this was the most important part. I want you to be clear on my motives. I have no interest in ruining your gala day. I am not trying to sabotage Lila. I am, however, CEO of my own life. I will not be used as an ATM, and I will not allow my children to be treated as disposable. I didn't start this. I am just very cleanly finishing it. You've been perfectly clear, he said. The shift was complete. I was no longer an issue to be managed. I was an asset he could use to find the truth. I have to go. I have to speak with Lila, and I need to speak to my father. Thank you for your candor. The line clicked dead. I looked at my own phone. A new email had just arrived. It was from Patty, sent from the board account. She knew I had her blocked. The leak had taken less than 5 minutes to travel back to her. The subject line was, "You vicious woman." The email itself was a novel of frantic, misspelled accusations. I had gone behind her back. I had tried to poison Grant. I was malicious and provocative and consumed with jealousy over Lila's happiness. It was a masterpiece of projection. She accused me of doing the very thing she had done to me for 5 years. I read it once, feeling nothing but a distant clinical pity. I saved the PDF, Patty email retaliation.pdf. I dragged it into the file of facts folder and then deleted the email. I did not reply. I would never reply to her again. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept. It was not a sleep of exhaustion but of completion. It was the deep, untroubled rest of a soldier who has successfully defended her border. I had drawn the line. I had held the line, and the enemy was now in disarray, fighting amongst themselves. The phone did not ring. The house was quiet. My children were safe in their beds. I had protected them, not by building a higher wall but by tearing down a false house. The next morning I was making pancakes. The sizzle of the batter hitting the pan filling the kitchen. Oliver was sitting at the table, quiet, pushing his fork around an empty spot on his plate. "Mom," he said, his voice small. "Yeah, buddy? That dinner with President Patty and Lila, the one where they asked us to be in the gala. Grandma Patty was wearing a really big ring and Lila's dress was shiny and Grant's car is really fast." He looked up and his eyes were full of a terrible adult understanding that broke my heart. "Is it because we're not rich? Is that why they don't want us at the party?" I dropped the spatula. I went to him, knelt on the linoleum, and took his hands. They were small and smeared with a little bit of syrup. "Oliver, look at me. This is the most important thing I will ever tell you. Do you understand the difference between price and value?" He shook his head. "Okay. Price is what something costs. That ring, that car, the Aspen Vale Pavilion, those things all have a high price. President Patty and Lila are very good at price. They think that's all that matters. They are collecting things with high price tags, and they think that makes them important." But I continued, squeezing his hands. "Value is what something is worth. Your kindness when you read June a story even when you'd rather be playing your game, that has value. Your honesty, the way you work so hard at baseball practice, that has value. June's paintings, your brilliant mind, value. Priceless." I tapped his chest right over his heart. "You, Oliver Thompson, are high value. June is high value. What we have in this house is high value. We are not poor in any way that matters. They are the poor ones because they are so blinded by price that they can't see value anymore. They wouldn't know value if it was sitting right in front of them. So they called you awkward. That's not a reflection on you. It's a confession of their own blindness." He processed that. His brow furrowed. Finally he nodded. "So they're poor in their brains." "Exactly," I said, smiling. "Poor in their hearts. Poor in their brains. Now eat your pancake." I went back to my office, feeling like I just won the only battle that truly mattered. I opened my inbox to check on my client work, but there was a new message. It wasn't from Grant or the planner or the board. The sender was an anonymous encrypted address, steadfastridge@proton.me. The subject line read, "A word of advice." I opened it. The message was 3 lines. "They are going to try to paint you as unstable. They will lie about your signature. If you do end up at the ceremony, just sit still. Say nothing." It wasn't signed. A cold shock ran down my spine. This wasn't a threat. It was a warning. It was an ally. Someone inside. Someone close to the Whitmores or the planning had seen the truth and was sending me a signal. And they had just confirmed my darkest suspicion. They will lie about your signature. My hand went to the desk drawer where I kept the file of facts. Right on top was the affidavit, the one with the raised notarized seal. The gala was scheduled for Saturday, June 21st. The deadline was Friday, June 20th, 3 p.m. The anonymous email had changed the game. They will lie about your signature. It meant they were desperate. It meant they were considering fraud. I called Mika at 8 a.m. on Friday morning. They're going to forge it, aren't they? They'll try, Mika said, her voice all business. They'll probably submit some form with a signature that looks vaguely like yours and hope the planner, who is also desperate to save this event, will just push it through. We're not going to let that happen. What's the move? The move is proactive. I'm sending a formal letter of warning on my firm's letterhead. It's going to Tanya Morrison, the event planner, and to the legal department at Aspen Vale Pavilion. It will state that my client Sarah Thompson has affirmed via a notarized affidavit that she has no contractual agreement with their venue. It will warn them that any use of her name or alleged signature to secure payment or services is unauthorized and will be treated as fraud. That should wake them up. Thank you, Mika. Don't thank me yet, she said. The next 7 hours are going to be a living hell. They're going to come at you from every angle. Don't answer. Let them burn themselves out. I'll let you know when the letter is sent. It was sent at 9:15 a.m. At 9:45 a.m., the first mortar shell landed. An email from Tanya Morrison. This time her tone wasn't corporate polite. It was pure distilled panic. Subject: Urgent, Willow Creek Centennial Gala Final Notice. Ms. Thompson, we are now in receipt of a formal legal warning from your counsel. Our legal team has reviewed the file. Due to the discrepancy regarding your status as a payer and the past due nature of the account, we must enforce the following. We require full payment of the outstanding balance $25,000 via wire transfer by 3 p.m. MST today, June 20th. This payment must be accompanied by a new cleanly signed contract by the responsible undisputed paying party. If we do not receive the wire transfer and the signed contract by 3 p.m., we will be forced to release the date. The event will be canceled, all staff will be sent home, and the pavilion will be locked. The only plan B we can offer at this late stage is to move the reception to the basement fellowship hall at the church, which our catering team can service on a limited basis. We are CCing Mrs. Patty Hargrove and Ms. Lila Hargrove on this final notice. We consider this matter gravely serious. The bomb was armed. The timer was set. My phone, which I had unblocked, began to vibrate on the desk. It was a cascade of notifications, a digital avalanche. Voicemails, texts, emails from addresses I didn't recognize. I let them pile up. I worked on my client's logo, my headphones on, listening to a true crime podcast. It felt appropriate. At noon I took a break to make the kids lunch. I checked the phone. 5 missed calls from the board vice president, 4 from Lila, 6 from Patty, and a string of voicemails. I pressed play on the first one from Patty. Her voice was unrecognizable, stripped of its imperious lacquer. Sarah, honey, pick up the phone, please. I don't know what this lawyer letter is. This is a misunderstanding. You know I would never. You know this is just for the community. This is its day. Honey, it's perfect day. You can't let them do this to it. Think of the shame. What will the Whitmores think? What will everyone say? This isn't about money, Sarah. It's about community. I deleted it. The next one, timestamped 11:30 a.m., was different. The panic was sharper. She's crying. Lila is crying. Sarah, you're doing this to the neighborhood. She's locked in her room. This is all she's ever wanted. Just sign the paper. It's just a signature. We will pay you back. I swear on the board's reputation. We will pay you back. Just sign the stupid form so the planner will back off. Don't be so cold. I'm begging you. As a neighbor, don't do this. I deleted it. The phone immediately rang again. Lila. I stared at the screen, then answered, putting it on speaker. What do you want? Lila? A high-pitched hysterical wail came through the speaker. You're ruining it. You're ruining everything. My one day, My one perfect day, and you're making it about you. You've always been jealous. Always. I was uninvited. Lila. My voice was a flat line. Who cares about a stupid text? She shrieked. You're supposed to be part of the community. You're supposed to just fix this. Grant is asking questions. The planner is threatening to lock the doors. And it's all because you won't just sign a stupid piece of paper. Why are you doing this to me? There was no apology, no acknowledgement, no shame, just entitlement baked to the bone. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was furious about the consequences. This is the consequence. Lila, I said. This is what happens when you treat people like they don't matter. I'm not fixing this. Your perfect day is built on lies. The foundation is crumbling. That's not my fault. That's gravity. I hung up on her scream. The phone rang again. Instantly. The board vice president. I answered. His voice was a low growl I had never heard before. The placid peace-at-any-price man was gone. In his place was a cornered animal. Sarah, don't you dare. Don't you Sarah me, I snapped. You've done it. Are you happy now? Your president is a wreck. Your Lila is suicidal. She's not suicidal. She's embarrassed. What's the difference? You've destroyed this community after everything we've done for you. I cut him off. What have you done for me? What exactly? Did you stand up for me even once in 5 years when your president cited my children and banned them from this gala? No, you did nothing. You are the king of nothing. Your silence is what got us here. There was a heavy choked sound on his end. And then the words I had been waiting my whole life for. The words that summed up his entire philosophy. Why can't you just sacrifice? He burst out, his voice cracking. Why? For once in your life, can't you just take the hit? Just sign the damn paper. Sarah, take the loss. Why do you always have to be so goddamn strong? Why can't you just be the one to give in? I held the phone, the silence stretching. I thought of my 2 children in the next room coloring. I thought of my business built from scratch. I thought of my notarized affidavit. Because I said, my voice quiet but heavier than his rage. I have sacrificed. I have spent my entire adult life taking the hit so you could have peace. I gave in. I am all out of give. I'm done. Don't call me again. I hung up the phone. I turned it to silent. At 2:45 p.m., a single text message came through from Grant. I am handling this. My apologies for the neighborhood's behavior. I stared at the message. My neighborhood's behavior. He had already switched sides. He had already reclassified Lila and Patty. They were no longer the prize. They were a liability. At 2:50 p.m., my work email lit up. It was from Lila. It was a single image, a photo of her taken on her phone in her gala dress. She was in her bedroom, a frantic tear-streaked smile on her face. The caption was just text typed into the email body. See, everything is still perfect. The gala is happening. You didn't win. I looked at the photo. A beautiful girl in a beautiful dress trapped in a burning house and telling everyone the fire was just festive lighting. It was the saddest thing I had ever seen. At 2:59 p.m., my phone lit up with Patty's number. I watched the clock on my computer. 3 p.m. The phone was still ringing. 3:01 p.m. The call ended. The deadline had passed. I shut down my computer. I walked into the living room where Oliver and June were packing their bags for Summit Splash. Goggles, towels, sunscreen. Mom, is it tomorrow yet? June asked. Almost, baby, I said. Almost. That night, after they were asleep, I went back to my office. I didn't turn on the light. I just sat in the blue glow of the monitor. I opened the file of facts. I reviewed the inventory. Screenshot exclusion.png. Patty's text. Lila's emoji. Patty email retaliation.pdf. The vicious woman email. Venue note Sarah Thompson. Chloe's confirmation of the resident note. Planner email 7b.pdf. The email with the release of obligation trap. Mika warning letter final.pdf. The official legal warning to the venue. Tanya. Final. Notice. 3 p.m.pdf. The 3 p.m. deadline email. Anonymous warning text. The proton.me. And finally the last item. I took the original out of the locked drawer and held it up to the moonlight. The crisp paper. The embossed raised seal. Affidavit Sarah Thompson notarized.pdf. My truth tangible, witnessed, and waiting. The file was complete. I was ready for tomorrow. I woke up on Saturday, June 21st, to a slash of brilliant, uncomplicated sunlight across my bedroom floor. It was 7 a.m. It was, according to the calendar I had marked with a giant X, Thompson Family Adventure Day. Somewhere else in Willow Creek Estates, or perhaps in Ridgeline City, a very different day was dawning. A day of frantic phone calls, of makeup being applied to tear-swollen eyes, of a $50,000 flower order being dumped at the locked gates of the Aspen Vale Pavilion, a day of profound public and expensive humiliation. I picked up my phone from the nightstand. I had powered it off at 10 o'clock the previous night, right after I'd laid out the kids' swimsuits. I powered it on. The screen instantly flooded. A digital tidal wave of notifications. 22 texts. 9 missed calls. 5 new voicemails. All of them had arrived after 3:01 p.m. yesterday. The top email displayed in bold was from Tanya Morrison, the planner. Subject: FWD event cancellation, Willow Creek Gala June 21st. I looked at the screen at the frantic digital screaming. I saw the board vice president's name. Lila's. Patty's. Then I looked at the patch of sunlight on the floor. Dust motes dancing in the beam. I put the phone face down on the nightstand. I did not read a single message. I did not listen to a single voicemail. I powered it off again. Oliver. June. I yelled up the stairs. Last one dressed doesn't get to pick the music in the car. A pair of small thundering feet hit the floor above me. June. She always won. Their laughter was the only sound in the house. The storm was raging somewhere else. Miles away. We weren't even getting the rain. Summit Splash was a glorious cathedral of manufactured joy. It smelled of chlorine, coconut sunscreen, and the sharp sugary tang of blue raspberry slushies. It was loud, bright, and utterly devoid of pretense. We rented a small cabana with a vinyl roof, and the kids exploded out of their cover-ups, their small bodies vibrating with anticipation. June, my fierce, cautious 6-year-old, made a beeline for the carnival games. She stood in front of the ring toss, her small brow furrowed in concentration. She spent $5 of her own allowance money, her tongue sticking out, trying to loop a plastic ring onto a glass bottle. On her very last try, the ring bounced off the bottle and landed improbably on the neck of a giant glitter-eyed purple octopus. The teenage boy running the booth looked as surprised as she was. Her shriek of, "I did it! Mom! I won him!" was a sound of pure, undiluted triumph. She hugged the octopus, which was half her size, and refused to put it down for the rest of the day. Oliver, my serious, soulful 10-year-old, had only one goal: the mountain drop. It was a terrifying 6-story near-vertical speed slide. He stood at the bottom, head tilted all the way back, just watching. "You don't have to ride that, buddy," I said, rubbing his wet shoulders. "I know," he said, his eyes not leaving the slide. "But I think I have to." I watched him climb the endless spiraling staircase. A small, determined figure. He reached the platform, spoke to the lifeguard, and then vanished into the bright blue tube. I held my breath. A heartbeat later, he rocketed out of the bottom, a streak of neon green, sending a massive plume of white water into the air. He surfaced, slicked his hair back with both hands, and looked over at me. He didn't just smile, he beamed. It was the grin of a boy who had faced down a giant and won. He ran past me to get back in line. I sat in a plastic lounge chair, the purple octopus drying in the sun next to me, and I watched my children. I watched them race each other, watched them argue over who got to use the blue inner tube, watched them devour French fries with greedy sticky fingers. I took pictures, not stiff-posed portraits in uncomfortable clothes but snapshots of life in motion. June mid-shriek as a fountain sprayed her in the face. Oliver airborne cannonballing into the wave pool. Their hair was a tangled mess. Their skin was pinkening and they were the most beautiful awkward things I had ever seen. "Mom," Oliver said later, collapsing into the chair next to me, wrapped in a towel. "This is the best day ever. Even better than my birthday. I'm so glad." "Sweetie," I said, pulling him close. "You know," I said, looking from his face to June's, who was dozing with her head on the octopus. "The best part about this, we didn't have to ask a single person for permission to be this happy." Oliver squinted at me. "Why would we need permission?" "Exactly," I said, tapping his nose. "You don't. Our joy is ours. We own it. We don't need anyone to invite us to have a good day. We just decide to." He nodded, accepting this as a fundamental truth, and then sprinted off for one last ride on the lazy river. We drove home at 5 o'clock, exhausted, sun-drained, and quiet. The kids were asleep before I'd even turned off the highway, their breathing deep and steady. I carried June to her bed and Oliver stumbled into his, falling asleep on top of his comforter. I plugged my phone in. I poured a tall glass of ice water, sat at my quiet kitchen counter, and braced myself. I opened the digital floodgate. The texts were a timeline of panic. 3:02 p.m. "Lila, they're locking the doors." 3:03 p.m. "Lila, they're serious." 3:03 p.m. "Lila, Grant is just staring at Mom." 3:04 p.m. "Lila, you did this." 3:05 p.m. "Patty, call me now." 3:07 p.m. "Board VP. Sarah, pick up. This is not a joke. You have ruined the neighborhood." 3:10 p.m. "Lila, I hate you. I hate you. I hate you." I skipped the rest. I opened my voicemail. The first was from the board VP. Timestamped 3:02 p.m. It wasn't words. It was just the sound of heavy, ragged breathing and then a click. The second was Lila. 3:03 p.m. It was a single high-pitched, incoherent shriek that dissolved into hysterical sobs. He's looking at me. The doors. They're locking the doors. Grant, stop looking at me. You did this." The line went dead. The third was from Patty. 3:10 p.m. Her voice was gone. The imperious cultured tone was stripped away, leaving behind a raw, gravelly rasp I'd never heard. It was the voice of a queen who had just watched her castle crumble to dust. "They locked the doors," she whispered, the words hoarse as if she still couldn't believe it. At 3 o'clock on the dot, the planner, Tanya, she had security escort us out. "The guests, they're arriving at the church, and there's nowhere to go. The Whitmores, they were just standing there. The flowers are still on the truck. Grant's father, he just looked at me." Her voice cracked. "They're moving it to the church, the basement. It's linoleum, Sarah. It has fluorescent lights. They're taking pictures in a hallway. You." The message ended in a sound of complete and utter despair. I sat there in the quiet of my kitchen, the setting sun painting the walls gold. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel a shred of triumph. I just felt still. It was the hollow, clean feeling of a fever that has finally broken. This wasn't a victory. It was just gravity. It was the natural, inevitable consequence of a structure built on lies, arrogance, and cruelty. The first gust of truth, and the whole glittering facade had collapsed into a pile of rubble in a church basement. My laptop chimed. An email had just arrived. It was from Tanya Morrison, the planner. Subject: FWD Event Cancellation Vendor Notice. MS Thompson. For your records, as of 3:01 p.m. yesterday, the Willow Creek Centennial Gala at Aspen Vale Pavilion was officially canceled due to non-payment and contract default. On a personal note, my subsequent investigation confirmed with my staff that your name was used improperly and without authorization by Patty Hargrove on multiple planning documents in an attempt to secure the booking on credit. I have never in my 15-year career witnessed such a willful and malicious act of self-destruction. I am reserving my right to report this fraudulent activity to the Colorado Vendors Association. I wish you and your children the best. So there it was, confirmation. Not only was I clear, but Patty was now facing professional blacklisting. I was about to close the laptop when 2 new notifications appeared on my phone screen, one right after the other. The first was a text from Grant. It was short. I understand now. Just those 3 words. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an explanation. It was a concession. It was the sound of a man who had finally seen the truth. And it was worse than he could have imagined. He understood the lies, the text, the money, the desperation. He understood who his new mother-in-law and his new neighborhood really were. The second notification was an email. The sender's name made my heart stop. Evelyn Whitmore, the groom's mother, the matriarch, the woman whose opinion Patty valued more than her own neighbor's dignity. The subject line was simple. An introduction. Dear Ms. Thompson, I must apologize for the cold introduction. My name is Evelyn Whitmore. I believe you are the neighbor of my new daughter-in-law. What transpired yesterday was deeply clarifying. I have heard a great deal about you. I believe it is time I heard from you. Would you and your children be available to join me for brunch tomorrow? Just us. My home. 11 a.m. It wasn't a request. It was a summon, but it didn't feel like a summon from a queen to a subject. It felt like a summon from one CEO to another. I looked at the picture of Oliver and June taped to my fridge, their faces smeared with chocolate ice cream from the water park. I typed my reply. Dear Mrs. Whitmore, we would be delighted. See you at 11. I drove to the Whitmore address on Sunday morning with a knot in my stomach. The directions led me not to a hypermodern glass box, but to a sprawling, ivy-covered stone manor set back from a quiet road in Ridgeline City. The house didn't scream new money. It whispered permanence. This was not Patty's world of curated minimalist luxury. This was a fortress of established wealth. A place where image wasn't necessary because the foundation was solid. I dressed the kids in their nicest Sunday clothes. Oliver in a crisp polo. June in a yellow sundress. Okay, guys, I said, turning off the ignition. Remember what we talked about? Be your polite, wonderful, amazing selves. Can I talk about baseball? Oliver asked, clutching the worn glove he'd insisted on bringing. If it comes up. Sure. Just read the room, buddy. Before I could even ring the bell, the heavy oak door swung open. A woman in her late 60s stood there, tall and composed. Her silver hair was in a sleek twist and she wore simple tailored cream trousers and a cashmere sweater. Her eyes were Grant's, sharp, intelligent, and assessing. This was Evelyn Whitmore. Sarah, she said, her voice warmer than I expected. She didn't offer a handshake. She just opened the door wider. Thank you for coming. And these must be Oliver and June. Her gaze swept over us. And it was nothing like Patty's surgical judgmental scan. She wasn't inventorying the brand of my shoes or the thread count of Oliver's shirt. She was looking at our faces, at the way we stood. It was an evaluation not of our appearance but of our character. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Whitmore, Oliver said, his voice clear. Please call me Evelyn. Come in, all of you. The house was warm, filled with books, art, and the faint scent of old wood and fresh flowers. Grant emerged from a study, looking pale and exhausted. The man I saw was not the confident groom from the engagement photos. He was a man who had survived a detonation. "Sarah, thank you for coming," he said, his voice low. Patty and the board were, as promised, nowhere to be seen. This was not a mediation. It was a debriefing. "Grant, why don't you show Oliver your father's collection in the library?" Evelyn suggested, her tone light but firm. Grant nodded, seeming grateful for the direction. "Oliver, I heard you play first base. My dad was a huge baseball fan. He has a ball signed by the 1927 Yankees. Want to see it?" Oliver's jaw dropped. "The whole team, even Babe Ruth?" He vanished down the hall with Grant, already chattering about batting averages. Evelyn then smiled at June, who was half hidden behind my leg. "And June, I have something in the sunroom I think you might love." She led June into a bright room overlooking a vast garden. In the corner stood an antique 3-story dollhouse, intricately detailed with tiny electric lights and velvet furniture. "This was mine when I was your age," Evelyn said. "I think the little girl in the blue dress is missing a shoe, but I was never very good at keeping things perfect." June, who had a wild imagination, was instantly captivated. "Her shoe is fine," she whispered, already on her knees. "She's just barefoot because she's a dancer." Evelyn smiled, a genuine warm smile, and led me into a formal sitting room. We were alone. Sunlight streamed through the leaded glass windows. She poured coffee from a heavy silver pot into delicate porcelain cups. It was all intensely civilized, a calm eye in the center of the storm. She handed me a cup and sat. She did not waste a single second on small talk. "Sarah," she began, her gaze perfectly level. "What Patty Hargrove told my family and what the facts appear to be are not in alignment." It was the most profound, elegant understatement I had ever heard. "No," I agreed, my voice steady. "They are not." For 2 years, Evelyn continued, I was told a story. She described you as troubled, prone to anxiety. She said you were deeply private and that your children were sensitive and that you were uncomfortable with formal events. She painted a picture of a fragile creature she was trying to protect from the world. "I am a freelance designer, Evelyn," I said, setting my cup on the saucer. The small clink was the only sound in the room. "I built my business from nothing. I am raising 2 children on my own. I live 20 minutes away from the pavilion. I am many things, but fragile is not one of them." "I gathered that," she said, a small dry smile touching her lips. "What I saw on Friday, what Grant told me about your correspondence, that was not fragility. That was precision. I need you to understand," I said, leaning forward. "My goal was never to ruin the gala. That was not my intention. I have a file on my laptop, screenshots of the texts, the vicious woman email from Patty, the planner's final notice, a notarized affidavit, all prepared for a legal battle I assumed was coming, but I never used it. I never sent it to the press. I didn't even show it to Grant until he called me, demanding answers. He told me," she said, nodding. "You sent the evidence. No commentary. You let the facts speak for themselves." "My only goal," I said, the truth of it solidifying in the quiet, sunlit room, "was to protect my children. They were promised roles and then had that promise ripped away. They were called awkward and banned from their neighborhood gala. And after that, I was still expected to pay for the privilege of my own community's humiliation. The rest, the cancellation, the move to the church basement, the public shame, that was simply the natural consequence of their own choices. I just refused to finance the lie any longer." Evelyn looked out the window for a long moment. "My late husband's family," she said, her voice thoughtful, "was obsessed with appearances. They were old Philadelphia money and they believed that how things looked was in fact what things were. I was not what they had in mind for their son. I was the daughter of a university professor. I read too much. I had opinions on politics. My mother-in-law spent the first decade of my marriage trying to polish what she called my rough edges. She turned her sharp gaze back to me. I learned a vital lesson. Sarah, there is a vast, unbridgeable canyon between face, image, what Patty is dying for, and dignity. Patty was willing to sacrifice your dignity, your children's dignity, and ultimately her own, all to maintain the image of a perfect community. It is a profound sickness. You, on the other hand, chose dignity and you taught it to your children. That is rare. The validation was so complete, so unexpected, it almost took my breath away. She was the first person in my entire life who had named the disease. The door opened and Grant and Oliver returned. Oliver's face glowing with awe, carefully holding a baseball in a clear acrylic case. He'd seen the ball. "Mom," Grant said. He looked marginally better than he had an hour ago, as if explaining something simple and true like baseball had grounded him. He looked at me and the exhaustion returned. "Sarah," he said, I need to apologize." "You don't," I said instantly. "You didn't do this." "No," he said, running a hand through his hair. "But I let it happen. I've been with Lila for 2 years. I saw the shiny exterior. I heard the stories about you, the difficult neighbor, and I accepted them. It was easier to believe the beautiful lie than to dig for the complicated truth. I failed in my due diligence. And yesterday, watching Patty, watching her try to pass off a forged signature to my father, my blood went cold. She actually did it. She tried," Grant said, his voice dark with the memory. "Right after the 3 p.m. deadline passed, she showed up at the church hysterical, waving a form. She said it was a misunderstanding that you had signed it. My father, he's in real estate. He's seen a million contracts. He just looked at the signature and asked to see her driver's license." She crumbled. "It was the most grotesque thing I have ever witnessed. So that was it. The final desperate move. The anonymous emailer had been right. I didn't accept Grant's apology. It wasn't mine to accept. He owed that to himself. But I accepted the respect he was showing me. Thank you for telling me." June wandered back in holding a tiny porcelain teapot from the dollhouse. She held it up for Evelyn to see. "The lady needs tea," she announced. Evelyn smiled and stood. The brunch was over. "Well," she said, "this has been a clarifying, if dark, chapter, but the story is not over." She looked at me, then at Oliver and June. "We, the Whitmores, host a very large, very loud, and very imperfect Thanksgiving. It is our favorite holiday. We value honest conversation, good food, and we have very little patience for image. Oliver, June, Sarah, we would be deeply honored if you would join us." I looked at her, this formidable, elegant woman who had seen through the facade in a way my own neighborhood never could. This wasn't just an invitation to a meal. It was an absorption. It was a signal. The Whitmores were realigning their definition of community. They were choosing value over price. "Evelyn," I said, my voice thick for the first time all day. "We would love that." As we walked to the door, I could feel the strong Colorado wind blowing through the trees in the garden, rattling the old windows. It was a cleansing wind, scattering the last of the dead leaves inside the quiet stone house. The story had fundamentally shifted. It was no longer about revenge. It was no longer about what I had lost. It was about what my children and I were about to gain. The brunch with Evelyn Whitmore was a ceasefire. The week that followed was the eerie, watchful quiet of a battlefield after the first volley, with both sides regrouping. I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that it wasn't over. Patty was not a woman who accepted defeat. She was a woman who simply changed the rules of the game and declared herself the winner. The first rumor came, as it always did, from Aunt May. "Get this," she said over the phone on Thursday. Her voice a conspiratorial rumble. Your HOA president is planning a do-over. What? A post-gala reception and celebration. May quoted, her voice dripping with scorn. To formally welcome the community back and clear up any unfortunate logistical misunderstandings from Gala Day. She's booking the grand ballroom at Ridgeline Hall for next Saturday, inviting everyone who was at the church plus a photographer from the local society page. She's trying to erase the church basement. Kiddo. She's trying to Photoshop her own life. It was so perfectly pathologically Patty that I almost had to admire the sheer audacity of it. She wasn't apologizing or atoning. She was creating a new, more photogenic reality and expecting everyone to accept it as the truth. But her narrative had a fatal flaw. It was missing a key character. And that character was about to go off script. Late Friday night, a text message lit up my phone. An unknown number. It's Lila. Can we talk? Please? Just you and me. My first instinct was to say no, to block the number and retreat back behind the walls I had so carefully constructed. But curiosity and a faint vestigial flicker of neighborly duty won out. Coffee shop downtown tomorrow 10 a.m., I replied. She looked worse than I could have imagined. When she walked into the daily grind, she was a ghost in couture. Her expensive silk blouse was wrinkled. Her eyes were puffy and ringed with dark circles, and the effortless, radiant confidence she had worn her entire life was gone, replaced by a raw, hunted fear. She sat down and didn't order anything. She just wrung her hands, her gaze darting around the cafe as if she expected her mother to materialize from the steam of the espresso machine. He won't look at me, she whispered, her voice cracking. Grant, he sleeps in the guest room. He's polite. He's correct. But he looks at me like I'm a stranger, like I'm a business deal that went bad. I said nothing. I just sipped my coffee. This was her story to tell. His mother, Evelyn. She's been kind. Lila continued, a tear tracing a path through her foundation. But it's a terrifying kindness. She asks me questions, simple questions about my childhood, about you, and I can feel her analyzing every word, searching for the lie. I've spent my whole life learning how to perform, Sarah. And for the first time, my audience doesn't want a performance. They want the truth. And I don't know what that is anymore. You know what it is, Lila, I said, my voice even. You just have to be brave enough to say it. And then it all came out. A torrent of confession and fear. She admitted she had seen the text Patty sent me. She admitted she'd thought it was funny. A final satisfying click of the lock on the door to her perfect life. A life where I was finally and completely out of the picture. She admitted she'd lied to Grant about my anxiety because her mother had told her it was the most palatable story. I was scared, she sobbed, her voice muffled by her hands. I was terrified of losing him, of losing this life. Mom said the Whitmores expected perfection and you and the kids, you weren't part of that picture, so I helped her cut you out. I thought if I just did what she said, everything would be perfect. How did my name get on the planning form? I asked, the one question that still mattered. She took a shaky breath and looked at me, her eyes full of a miserable clarifying shame. It was the internal intent to book form for the planner, not the final contract. Mom filled it out. She listed you as a financial guarantor. I saw her do it. Did she sign my name? Yes, Lila whispered, the word barely audible. She just scribbled something. She told the planner you were out of the aesthetic zone and had authorized her to sign on your behalf. She said it was just a placeholder, a formality to show the venue we were serious. She said your real signature would be on the final contract. But then you fought back and she tried to use that form, that fake signature as leverage. She never thought you'd call a lawyer. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The premeditated fraud. The cold, calculated lie. I leaned forward. This isn't about forgiveness, Lila. That's not on the table right now. This is about a choice. You can continue to live in her fantasy world, and you will lose Grant, and you will lose the Whitmores, and you will spend the rest of your life as a hollow, brittle woman just like her, or you can choose the truth. What does that mean? She asked, her voice trembling. It means no more ambiguity, no more unfortunate misunderstandings. It means you stand up in public at this ridiculous re-reception she's planning and you tell everyone the truth. The whole truth about the text. About the lies. About the forged signature. She stared at me horrified. In front of everyone? The papers? She'll never forgive me. And Grant will never respect you if you don't. I countered. You have to choose. Lila. Your mother's approval or your husband's respect. Your gilded cage or your own dignity. You can't have both. I left her there, crying into her hands. That afternoon Grant called me. His voice was quiet, but the cold fury was gone, replaced by a weary resolve. Lila told me about your conversation, he said. She told me everything about the form, the signature. He paused. My mother spoke with both of us last night. She said a marriage cannot be built on a foundation of lies. She told Lila that if she wanted to be a Whitmore she had to act like one, and that means choosing integrity over image every time. What did Lila decide? I asked. She agreed, Grant said, and I heard a flicker of something new in his voice. Hope. She agreed to do it. At the reception she's going to tell the truth. The final confrontation was set. Patty was building her own stage, arranging the lighting, and sending out the invitations. She thought she was directing a play about the neighborhood's triumphant recovery. She had no idea she was setting the scene for her own public execution. My phone rang an hour later. It was the board vice president. His voice was thin, pleading. Sarah, I just heard about this party. Patty says it's to smooth things over. Can't you just come? Smile? Let this go for the community. I thought of the man torn between the president he feared and the neighbor he'd abandoned. His years of choosing silence had cost him everything. I can't do that, I said, my voice gentle but firm. Patty made a choice. Lila made a choice. And you, by staying silent, made a choice. Now we all have to live with the consequences. I hung up and called Mika. I told her about Lila's confession, about the forged planner form. Good, she said. All business. That's the smoking gun. Now we prepare for the endgame. I'm drafting a final round of letters, cease and desist. They're going to the planner, the venue, and the church parish office. It will state that we have a sworn confession that Patty Hargrove knowingly forged your signature on a planning document. It will warn them that any further use of your name or any attempt to enforce a financial claim based on fraudulent documents will result in immediate legal action. The board was set. The pieces were in motion. That evening, I saw the announcement online on the Ridgeline Society page. The Willow Creek HOA and Whitmore families are pleased to invite guests to a post-gala celebration. It was accompanied by a glowing engagement photo of Lila and Grant smiling their perfect fall smiles. I opened my laptop and created a new folder on the desktop. I named it Final. I didn't need a sword. I just needed the truth. I began assembling my arsenal. 1. A printout of the email chain withdrawing my support, CCing the venue. 2. The call logs from my phone showing the barrage of calls from the board. 3. A printout of Tanya Morrison's final email confirming the fraudulent use of my name. 4. A copy of Mika's cease and desist letter. 5. The original notarized affidavit. Its embossed seal. A small hard mountain of fact. This was my armor. This was my evidence. Patty was planning a party to rewrite history. I was coming to provide a public correction. The truth didn't need to be shouted. It just needed to be seen. And on Saturday night, under the bright lights of Ridgeline Hall, everyone was going to see it. Ridgeline Hall was bathed in a warm, forgiving amber light designed to make everyone look rich and happy. Champagne flutes clinked. A string quartet played something blandly elegant. At the center of it all, on a small elevated stage, stood Patty. She was magnificent in a sequined silver gown, a triumphant smile plastered on her face, a microphone in her hand. A photographer from the Ridgeline Chronicle circled her like a shark. And so, she was saying, her voice echoing with practiced sincerity. While there were a few minor logistical hurdles, as there always are with big events, what truly matters is that our community is now united. It was all just a simple misunderstanding, one that has been completely and lovingly resolved. That was my cue. I didn't storm in. I didn't make a scene. I walked through the grand double doors as quietly as a shadow, but I wasn't alone. On my right was Mika, her briefcase held firmly in her hand. On my left was Mr. Abernathy, a quiet professional notary public I had hired for the evening. Holding each of my hands were Oliver and June. We were not here to fight. We were here to present a correction to the official record. Across the room I saw them. Grant standing near the stage, his jaw tight, his shoulders squared. Beside him Evelyn Whitmore, a figure of absolute regal calm. They saw us. They nodded. The trap was set. Patty hadn't seen us yet. She was still basking in the glow of her own fabricated narrative. She turned to the band leader. And now for their first dance as husband and wife, a couple whose love has conquered all. Wait! The voice was quiet, trembling, but amplified by the microphone. It was a sound that cut through the entire ballroom. It was Lila. She walked onto the stage, her hand shaking as she took the second microphone from its stand. Grant moved to the foot of the stage. His eyes locked on her, offering silent support. "Before we dance," Lila said, her voice gaining a sliver of strength. "Before we do anything else, I need to say something. Something true." A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. The photographer raised his camera. Patty's smile froze, a rictus of panic. "Lila, darling, what are you doing?" Lila ignored her. She looked out at the sea of faces, and for the first time she wasn't performing for them. "What my mother just called a misunderstanding," she began, her voice cracking, "was in fact a lie. A series of lies, and I was a part of them." The murmuring stopped. The silence was absolute. I uninvited my neighbor Sarah Thompson and her children from our gala. It was cruel and it was wrong. And when she justifiably withdrew her financial support, we lied. We told our vendors and our community that she was responsible for payments she never agreed to. My mother used my neighbor's name without her permission to try and save the booking. The collective gasp was audible. Every eye in the room swiveled from Lila to Patty. Patty's face was a mask of placid denial, but her eyes were glittering with pure, unadulterated fury. This was my moment. I walked forward, not to the stage but to the empty lectern at the side of the room. I opened my folder and calmly, deliberately placed the contents on the polished wood, the email chains, the call logs, Tanya Morrison's final email, and right on top the notarized affidavit, its embossed seal catching the light. I didn't say a word. The manager of Ridgeline Hall, a man I'd seen conferring with Evelyn earlier, stepped forward. "A quick logistical announcement," he said, his voice professionally neutral. "For the record, Ridgeline Hall requires the primary client of record to be responsible for any and all outstanding charges for tonight's event. We do not, as a matter of policy, accept ghost guarantors." Evelyn Whitmore took one deliberate step forward. "And I would like to add," she said, her voice clear and carrying across the entire room, "that the Whitmore family does not tolerate deception. From this moment forward our family will be defined by truth." The board vice president stood frozen between his president and the lectern. His eyes were locked on the affidavit, on the official undeniable seal. He looked like a man watching two trains about to collide, and he was standing on the tracks. "She's trying to ruin this," Patty shrieked, her mask finally cracking. "She's a malicious, jealous liar." Mika stepped calmly to the lectern. She didn't raise her voice. She simply picked up a single sheet of paper. "For clarification," she said, her lawyerly voice cutting through the chaos. "Here is the timeline of events. 6:12 a.m. October 14th, Sarah Thompson is uninvited via group chat. 10:05 a.m. October 17th, Sarah Thompson sends a formal email withdrawing financial support. 9:15 a.m. October 20th, my office sends a legal warning to the venue regarding the unauthorized use of my client's name. As she spoke, the main doors to the ballroom swung open. Tanya Morrison, the gala planner, walked in, holding a single piece of paper. She walked directly to the lectern. "This," Tanya said, her voice shaking with anger, "is a copy of the internal planning form submitted by Patty Hargrove. The one with the forged signature." Mr. Abernathy, the notary, stepped forward. He took the form. He then asked me for my driver's license. In the dead silence of the room, in front of 100 witnesses and a press photographer, he compared the two signatures. He looked up. "As a certified notary public for the state of Colorado," he announced, his voice ringing with official authority, "I can affirm that the signature on this planning document was not written by the same hand as the signature on this legal ID. They are not a match." The photographer's flash exploded, a silent white detonation. Grant turned slowly, deliberately, to face Patty. His voice was low, but it was sharper than a shard of glass. "You took our gala, our marriage, and you made it a stage for your own vanity. You are done." Lila looked past him, her eyes finding mine across the room. The layers of makeup, a fear, of 5 years of trying to be perfect seemed to melt away. "Sarah," she whispered, her voice breaking. I'm sorry." Patty lunged for Lila's microphone. "You will not." 2 uniformed security guards from the hall materialized, stepping between her and the stage. The string quartet fell silent. The entire room, 150 people, were staring. Not at Patty's rage, not at Lila's tears. They were staring at the pile of documents on the lectern, at the embossed irrefutable seal gleaming under the amber lights. I looked up, my children's small hands squeezing mine. My voice was not loud, but it was clear, and it was heard by everyone. "I'm not asking for praise," I said. "I'm just not allowing anyone to write my name on their lies anymore." A beat of absolute silence. It was the hush of a deep canyon holding its breath, waiting for the thunder. Grant put his arm around Lila's shoulders, but his eyes never left Patty. "From this moment on," he said, his voice ringing with the finality of a judge's gavel, "who belongs in this community will be decided by the truth." The camera flashed again and again, a series of bright, sharp pops. The hall manager spoke into his wrist radio and the elegant music was cut off, plunging the room into a stunning electric silence. I squeezed Oliver's hand. I squeezed June's. They looked up at me, not with fear but with a new profound understanding. They had just watched their mother redraw the map of their world. The scene froze. Patty trapped in the spotlight, her beautiful lie shattered at her feet. Lila weeping not with sorrow but with the terrifying cleansing relief of a confession. Grant, a husband finally standing on solid ground. And the truth in black and white laid bare for all to see, with no place left to hide. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and let's connect and share our thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and if you want to help this story reach more people, please hit that hype button to give it an extra boost.